My name is Tom Miller. I'm the owner of Window and Door Central in Appleton, a window and door dealer. I've been in the window and door and glass business for over 40 years and consider myself a window snob. A window snob is a person with an exaggerated interest in anything related to windows and a person who believes that their knowledge of the subject is far superior to anyone else. To call yourself a window snob, you must know where a OG lug is located on a window. So we've driven by this house probably literally thousands of times, and the previous owner had installed casement windows with transoms above, which is horribly wrong for a Greek Revival style cottage. So I casually mentioned to my wife, I says, we should buy this house just to change the windows out. And she must have thought I was serious, so one thing led to another. We happened to realize we knew who the owners were of the house, so I'd sent a letter in January of 2020, I believe it was, and we said if they ever had any interest in selling the house that we would consider it for a restoration project. And at that time we didn't realize that the house was Appleton's oldest original house and that it was built in 1851. So after numerous letters sent in many different locations, we finally got a response in August of 2020, and they said we got your letter, and if you're interested in purchasing the house, we'll be willing to talk about it. So by December of 2020 and January of 2021, we took over ownership. At that time, we had to come up with a plan on what our next step was, and we, at that time, realized it was the oldest original house, and somebody had to save it. So we set about to do a period-correct restoration. So I mentioned this is the L.B. Leach House, built in 1851. So L.B. Leach, Lucian Bonaparte Leach, he was born in 1817 in New Milford, Connecticut. And we found that he moved into the area about 1850 with his wife Harriet, son Louis B. Leach, and his daughter Julius Leach. The Leaches bought the property for $60 from George and Catherine Law in 1850. The property was sold a year later to Robert Morrow. Robert Morrow paid $600 for the property, so we have evidence that there's no way the property would have increased in value that much over that short a time, so the house had to be built in 1851. Robert Morrow was one of the first dry good stores on College Avenue, and it was Blood and Morrow. And we have some clues that at that time L.B. Leach probably worked with Robert. The house most likely was built by Elijah Morrow. Elijah was a prominent lumberman, developer from the Green Bay area, and Robert's brother. We don't feel that either Robert or L.B. Leach would have been in a position to build the house. We know that Elijah was a builder and had the resources and the means to build the house. In May of 1855, 60-year-old Jeremiah Wood purchased the house from Robert and Martha Morrow. At this time, the Morrows and the Leaches moved to Kansas to start all over again with more developing, more dry goods stores, hotels, and so forth. And both of them became very prominent in the development of the state of Kansas. Jeremiah Wood lived here from 1855 to 1865 with his family. In 1865, he sold the house to a Miss Emily J. Lee for $500, which was actually a loss because he paid $1,000 from Morrow. So the only thing that we can surmise is he did have a daughter named Emily J., and we believe that this possibly was sold to her as part of a wedding gift for her and her husband. Emily J. Lee was married to Harley H. Lee, and they lived here from 1865 to 1867. We believe that they had gotten divorced and there was evidence of a lawsuit, so it's possible that the house was involved in that lawsuit at the time, and in 1867 they sold the house to an Emily McPherson. Emily McPherson was born in Eastport, Maine, and she was the widow of John McPherson. John McPherson most likely was one of the earliest settlers in the Appleton area. Emily lived in the house from 1867 to 1902. And she had a son, Eben McPherson, and a daughter, Maud McPherson. And at that time, she had leased or rented out a number of rooms in the house, which is not a big house, so they must have stacked them in like cordwood, to Lawrence students. And there was a very number of prominent Lawrence students who had lived in the house back in the 1860s and 1870s. Three of the more commonly known names are John and Henry Favel. They were both ministers in the Congregational Church, and John Favel went on to become, I believe, the 23rd mayor of Appleton. Another gentleman, Bradford Raymond, later became the president of Lawrence University in the 1890s and is credited with saving the university from financial ruin. And the Bradford House on campus is named after, or I'm sorry, the Raymond House is named after Bradford Raymond. Emma McPherson died in 1902, and at that time her son Eben still owned the house and rented it out to Emma Louisa Ellis, who was the former Emma Louisa Gruner, was the widow of Walter J. Ellis. Walter died in 1892, and Emma Louisa moved into the house in 1903. In 1900, she married Dr. Ellsworth, who was a prominent doctor and actually the county and city doctor at the time. She married Dr. Ellsworth in 1900, and lo and behold, the minister who performed the wedding service was John Favel, so the whole thing goes full circle. They were divorced in 1902, and I believe within about 6 months, Dr. Ellsworth was on to his third wife. Miss Ellis had one son. It was Allen Ellis, and he was a military officer, and he died in 1943. Louisa Ellis lived in the house until 1935, and at that time she moved over to the Army home in King, Wisconsin, and because of her son's ties to the military, she was able to enjoy her final days at the military home. In 1916, Eben McPherson sold the house to Lamar and Leona Olmsted, and they continued to rent it to Mrs. Ellis. The Olmsteds purchased the home for $2,000 in 1916, and like I said, Miss Ellis stayed here until 1935, and the Olmsteds resided at 118 South Law Street, which coincidentally is now the Raymond House on Lawrence campus. In 1935, the Olmsteds sold the property to Lawrence University for $1. And at that time, Lawrence had planned on building a quadrangle of fraternity and sorority houses, and the house was going to be either tore down or somebody had to move it. At that time, Carl and Pearl Shooter bought the house for $50 with the intent of moving it to its current location at 515 West 5th Street in Appleton. The Shutters moved the house in 1935 with the intention that their son, Carl Bud Shutter, was going to be his honeymoon house because he was newly married, and this was going to be the house for him and his wife. Carl and Pearl Shooter had the intention of restoring the house in 1935, not to 1851 standards, but they were going to modernize it. So at that time, we believe, is when the hardwood floors went in, a modern heating system with central heating, plumbing, and electrical at that time, which brought it up to today's standards. Carl Bud Shooter and his wife lived here from 1936 until 1940, and after that time, the Shooters continued to rent the house to various people over the 40s and the 50s. One of the most prominent residents of the house was Pearl's brother, Lester Baliat. And Lester ran the Baliat Oil and Supply Company, or Baliat Coal and Supply Company on State Street in Appleton. And he lived here from 1966 to 1992. And Lester was a collector of antiques, and the house was fully furnished with family antiques. We actually have 2 pieces of his furniture that were here during the entire time that Lester had lived here. And one of the one of the bedrooms is named after Lester in honor of his long tenure at the house here. Les Baliat moved out of the house in 1992 and died in 1994. At that time, the daughter of the Shutters, Mary Ellen Sensenbrenner, sold the house to the Hausermans, which was Dr. Hauserman and his wife Carol, and they used it as a rental property, and they did that up until we purchased the home in 2020. And at that time, they had replaced some of the windows with some vinyl replacement windows, steel entry doors, modern kitchen cabinetry, a fiberglass bathtub. And when we took over the house, we decided we were going to do a period correct restoration and realized that period correct for 1851 just would not have been a living house. So it made more sense to do a period sympathetic restoration, keeping all the modern amenities and the heating and electrical and plumbing systems intact, but bring the house back to period sympathetic restoration. We obviously could not do a 1851 kitchen and bathroom because they wouldn't have had anything that would be resemble of anything today. So we went with a 1920s style kitchen and bath, farmhouse sink in the kitchen, unfitted with freestanding cabinetry. The bathroom is a clawfoot tub, pedestal sink, and tile floor with subway tile on the wall. So it's very reminiscent of a 1920 style kitchen and bath. As I mentioned earlier, the house is a Greek Revival cottage, which in a Greek Revival style, it's very symmetrical. From front to back, it's almost a mirror image side to side. And obviously one of the things that I was itching to do was replace the windows because I'm a window snob. So what would have been correct for this style home would be a double hung style window, 6/6 lights. And what most likely would have been typical of the time that the home was built for a Greek Revival would have been a white frame window with black sashes. And the reason they did black sashes back then is most of your windows would have been, or at least the glass for the windows would have been transported either stagecoach or boat, and large panes of glass would have been nearly impossible to get. So most colonial period homes had small panes of glass for easy transportation. By painting the sashes black from the standing back, it gives the appearance of a large pane of glass, and the larger the pane of glass, the more prominent you were in the community. So in a Greek Revival style home, that's where you would have had the 6/6 lights, black sashes, and a white frame. We stayed with the white siding. We presumed that it was white from the very beginning, which would have most likely been the common color for paint at that time. And the shutters are shutter green, which was, again, a most common color for a Greek Revival style home. We had evidence that the front entry door was a Tombstone style door with glass with an arch top, and that had been replaced with a steel door. And we were hoping to find an original Tombstone style door, and our good friend Linda Muldoon said, "Hey, I happen to have one of those in my garage. If it works, you can have it." So we found the door, stripped it down, redoweled it, new glass in it, and we have what we believe is as close to the original Tombstone style door that was possibly in the house in 1851. There are hardwood floors throughout the house, and we believe those most likely were put in 1935 when the house was relocated here by the Shutters. It's interesting enough, we had the floors refinished, but not sanded and a real aggressive refinish. We just had a light buff and scrub, and then an oil-based finish that would have been reminiscent of 1935. We found one piece of hardwood in one of the bedrooms that had some dry rot, and our intention was that we were going to cut that piece out and sister in a new piece of flooring. And when we took that piece of flooring out of there, we found the original green plank flooring from the 1850s underneath that. And strangely enough, we had already decided on a green plank floor for the kitchen, and the color came out very close to what that original plank flooring was. So rather than cover it up, we put a little plexiglass cover, which that's a little peek into the past, which you'll be able to see. The parlor fireplace was originally painted white, and it was our intention to repaint the surround white again. And as we started stripping the paint off, we found that it was quarter sawn oak underneath it, and it was beautiful wood. So we took the surround off, had it stripped down, and refinished it to the original quarter sawn oak. And then we got a little creative with the tiles around the fireplace. Stole an idea from the Hearthstone, who has themes tiles throughout the entire Hearthstone facility. And what we did is we put a series of 8 picture tiles around the fireplace. One is the hydroelectric substation, which you'll be able to see down in Law Street. The cover of Land of the Fox, which is a history book of the Fox Valley by Lillian Mackesy. A portrait of Elijah Morrow, the builder of the home. The L.B. Leach House, the sketch of the house. We have Lawrence's main hall. We have Lawrence's chapel, a likeness of Edna Ferber, and also Harry Houdini. So a little bit of Appleton history in the tiles around the fireplace. Part of the fun of doing the restoration on the house was furnishing the home with, again, period correct furnishings. A lot of them are antiques, some are replicas, but basically what we did is whatever we felt looked good, and everything kind of came together really well. The 3 pieces or 4 pieces that you see in front of us here came from Lawrence University, and it was Lawrence's intention to throw it out because nobody seemed to want it. One of the custodians and his wife picked up the furniture and had it in their home for many, many years, and got to the point where they didn't know what to do with it anymore. And when we saw it, I thought it would be a nice fit for the home. So we've got the settee, the 2 chairs, and then the marble top coffee table. The table in the corner was my wife's godmother, and then in the opposite corner here we've got a barrister bookcase, which was my wife's godmother's. So most of the hangings on the wall were picked up from estate sales and antique stores. As I mentioned, one of the tenants from 1966 to 93 or 1992 was Lester Baliat. And Lester was a collector of heirlooms, and the 2 pieces that you see in front of us here, the settee and the chair, were part of Lester's collection, and those would have been in the house in the 1960s. And they are Civil War era furniture, and they are all hand carved. And once we started on the restoration of the house, I got a phone call out of the blue from Lester's grandniece, and she says, "I have some of Lester's furniture, would you be interested in it?" And you could have tipped me over with a feather. I said, "Well, absolutely, I think it certainly belongs here." So we were able to bring some of Lester's furniture back to the house. As we started doing the restoration on the house, we had picked a series of colors from a palette of restoration colors. And interesting enough, as we were going through all the different trim work in the house and scraping paint, we found each of those colors buried between layers of paint. So all the trim colors that you see in the house are actual historically correct colors, but most of them are actually correct for the room. This is the dining room. We wanted to wallpaper at least one room in the house, and we went on a mission to find a wallpaper that we thought was fitting and proper for the house. We ordered a sample of this. When we got it, it's one of those things that just jumped out at us and said, yes, this is definitely the wallpaper we want for this house. All the woodwork in this room here is original, and basically it's been just painted over, and we wanted to maintain all those little nicks and gouges that have been put into the wood for the last 170 years. We didn't want to have to disrupt that and let that story still be told. As we mentioned earlier, the kitchen is a 1920s vintage kitchen. Obviously, a 1851 kitchen wouldn't have looked anything like this if they would have had much of a kitchen at all. It would have been an old cook stove and maybe a tub for some water. So with the 1920 style kitchen, we went with a farmhouse style sink. The cabinets are all handmade cabinets to mimic what would have been pretty much standard back in 1920. A lot of this is what would be categorized as an unfitted kitchen, so you don't see a lot of built-in cabinetry, open shelving on the walls, and a hutch there will, house most of the dishes and silverware. The floor in the kitchen had multiple layers of remodel upon remodel upon remodel. What we ended up doing was tearing all the flooring out and putting in a new painted wood floor. And this is all tongue and groove, rough sawn pine flooring. And when we told people we were going to put in a hardwood floor and paint it, they just about lost their mind. But this is what would have been original to the house, is a plank floor that would have been painted. When we purchased the home, the bathroom had been remodeled with big box home center cabinetry, fiberglass tub, and a slider window that was up quite high. Again, we went with the 1920s style bathroom, clawfoot tub and a pedestal sink, a hexagon pattern floor tile and subway tile coming up the walls. And the subway tile has an accent strip with a chair rail around it, which would have been very reminiscent of a 1920 style bathroom. Originally, this bathroom had a 10-foot ceiling like the rest of the house, and it was lowered down to an 8-foot ceiling. We knew that we had to put in an exhaust system, so we raised it back up to a 9-foot ceiling in the bathroom, and it functions very well. The medicine cabinet was a handmade cabinet to resemble a wooden medicine cabinet from the 1920s. In the 1930s, in the Appleton Review, there was a story about the house, and it described a lot of the interior features. And it mentioned about straight panel doors and crockery hardware. So we replaced all the interior doors with 4-panel straight panel doors and replication hardware, which is the white porcelain, which would have been the crockery hardware. So this is the Baliat bedroom, named in honor of Lester Baliat, again, who lived here from 66 to 92. We actually have a script from a home tour of 1978 of historical homes in the neighborhood. And at the time when Les was here, it described all the furnishings in the house and the location of the furnishings. So we were able to kind of replicate the way it looked back in 1978 when Les was here. The bed that you see in here is a full queen-size bed. It was really difficult for us to find a headboard because there is no such thing as an antique queen-size headboard. So we had to modify a full-size bed or a double bed to fit onto a queen-size. And the rest of the furnishings are historically correct. We have the wash basin with the pitcher and bowl, and that would have been pretty common of a home of this era. This is the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. We believe there's evidence that this might have been the original kitchen. On the wall to the west here, there was a doorway at one time that was filled in, and it would almost make sense too, because the bathroom is directly next to it, and if this were the original kitchen, the bathroom may have possibly been a pantry at the time. Again, the smaller of the 2 bedrooms, and the decorations or the furnishings are an antique dresser. We have this rocking chair that we fell in love with. It's from the Schramm Chair Company that was in Oshkosh, and it's a patent on the spring mechanism that causes the rocker to rock back and forth. Schramm Chair Company from Oshkosh. Thank you for joining us on a tour of the LB Leach House. We hope you've enjoyed what we've encountered over the last year and a half with the restoration process. Oftentimes when I would be working on the house and neighbors would walk past, they'd ask, "Are you the owner of the house?" And I always felt a little guilty saying, "Yes, I am the owner of the house," because I don't feel like I actually am the owner. I'm just a caretaker for a short window of time, and respecting the 172 years before me and the people that have owned the house and who've lived here, and all the birthdays and funerals and celebrations and Christmases, and so like I say, I'm just the caretaker for a short period of time. So if you want to learn more about what we've been doing, you can follow us on Facebook, Appleton's Oldest House.